Jill Stein went on The Breakfast Club, and we're gonna watch her. So that's what we're about to do right now.
It's up in the morning. The Breakfast Club.
Got some special guests joining us. We have Dr. Jill Stein. Welcome.
Hello.
And Dr. Butch Ware.
Good
Welcome.
morning.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
We in the building.
Y'all are the Green Party presidential candidate and running mate. Tell the people what.
So my understanding is that he's her VP.
From the Democrats and the Republicans.
Well, for one thing, we don't take money from billionaires and bankers and AIPAC and Wall Street and the war machine. So we're a people-powered party. That's what makes us totally different. That's what liberates us to actually tell it like it is and to stand up and fight for the people, for the health care that we need as a human right, for the housing that we need.
Listen, yes, great. I agree with everything she's saying, but she can't fucking win. So, like, I understand everything she's saying. I agree with it, but you fundamentally can't win.
What would you say to people that feel like the Green Party is really taking votes away from Democrats and it's a disruptor? A lot of people, especially a lot of older people, when you talk about other parties outside of Republican and Democrats, they say, oh, all they're doing is being disrupting. They're just taking the votes away from other parties. What are your thoughts on that?
So that's kind of the propaganda of the power machine that wants you to stay in your place, basically, and to think that resistance is futile and think that you don't own your vote. I mean, who owns your vote? Politicians have to earn your vote. They don't own it. And that's the question. Are they earning your vote? You know, when you actually look at our condition, people are facing a crisis really in every dimension of our lives, and it's not getting better, yet our resources are being squandered. 68% of Americans want an immediate cease.
Let's look up the term, what propaganda actually means, right? Information, especially biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Okay, so she's saying that if you say that the Green Party is taking away votes from Democrats, you are using misleading nature or misleading words to promote a particular political cause, which is kind of true because you are promoting a political cause where you're saying, hey, those votes are taking away from Democrats, but it's not biased or misleading because at the end of the day, you are taking votes away from other people. So like, I don't really know if I would necessarily call that propaganda, but also it's like what Jill Stein is saying, like, sure, that would be true 100% in a world where she could win.
Ceasefire and an end to the genocide. 68%. Yet you can hardly get a single vote on that behalf in Congress, and you're getting a standing ovation per minute for that war criminal Netanyahu, you know, who is carrying out this genocide, which could be ended with a simple phone call from the president, just like Reagan did, just like Eisenhower did before him. The U.S. is in charge. This is our genocide going on right now. And don't let them talk you into voting for genocide. If you vote for genocide, you're endorsing it, you're enabling it.
I had done an Instagram Live with Dr. Jill Stein, and I asked her a couple of questions. I had just posted a reel where Kamala Harris had been asked about reparations.
Kamala Harris.
Okay, Kamala Harris had posted a reel about reparations. I posted a reel where she was talking about it, and she was asked, and she sort of went around for about 90 seconds, and then she ended by saying, I will never do anything that only helps Black people. In other words, it was a rising tide, lift all boats. We're going to have social policies and stuff that helps Black folks by default. So I asked Dr. Jill in the interview, what's your position on reparations? And she said, they behave as though it's incalculable, but it has been calculated by specialists many times. It's between 10 and $13 trillion US, and I'm in favor of payments, cash payments to the descendants of the enslaved. So this had my attention with that, right? The second point is I said, well, we know that you have been at the forefront of the struggle for Palestinian liberation, and as an anti-Zionist Jewish white woman, that is a powerful statement, especially seeing you get arrested at, pro-Palestine, rally. So I know where you stand on Gaza. And we wouldn't be talking if you didn't stand in that place. This was before I was on the ticket. But I said, what's your overall vision of foreign policy? And she said, to dismantle the American empire. And I said, yeah, and you better hurry up quick and do it before somebody do it for you, right? That those two processes look very different. If you take the $1 trillion a year that are being thrown away, murdering other people's children in foreign countries, and instead put that into investment.
Listen, in theory, everything Jill Stein is saying sounds great. In theory, but okay, let's say she wants to bring down the American empire, right? Okay, cool. let me just entertain that ideology for a second, right? Let's say we vote her into presidency, okay? Cool. I'll entertain that as well. She's still going to have to work under Congress. She's still going to have to work under Senate. Like, she's still going to have to work with the Supreme Court. She can do little things here and there to reform shit the way that she wants to. But at the end of the day, she still has to work under a system that is systematically built under imperialism and works under an imperialist system, unless she wants to somehow start like a revolution or some shit. Like, I just don't know how she would even like do that fundamentally, even if she were to get elected, which she can't.
Investments in infrastructure, into social housing, into healthcare in this country, then that looks like a flourishing, prosperous future, not just for Black America, but for all of America, right? Whereas if you continue to torment humanity with the most brutal imperialist state ever to exist in human history, then we're coming up on a 9/11 memorial, right? Jill and I are going to do something, a march in Detroit. Well, what did Malcolm say about chickens coming home to roost? If we keep exporting this violence all over the globe, then it is going to keep coming right back here to our homes. And that's something that doesn't just concern Black and brown folk. That's something that concerns all folk. Last thing that I'll say on this, in response to your question, DJ Envy, I would, one version that we get of that question, regularly is like, well, you're throwing your vote away, right? That's the other version of it, okay? And the thing is in this broke Electoral College, and by the way, the Green Party stands for abolishing the Electoral College, okay? And so that hangover from slavery, and bringing in ranked choice voting in all voting systems so that you're not putting people on opposite sides where they bang on each other, right? The real criminal red and blue is not the honorable street organizations like the Bloods and the Crips. The real criminal gangs, red and blue, are the Democrats and Republicans. And right now, they're being encouraged to bang on each other in public. If you have ranked choice voting, then people are going to be drawn to the middle rather than drawn to extremes. But let's go back to the question about throwing your vote away. In this Electoral College system, all y'all throwing your votes away. Because unless you live in one of them 4 or 5 swing states, it is already decided that your state is going to go either blue or red before you ever get into the booth. So instead of throwing your vote away on team red or team blue when it don't make no difference in the state that you in, why not vote for reparations now? Why not vote for a ceasefire now? Why not build power in a Green Party that is going to give people an actual...
Okay, so there's so much to unpack there. First of all, there's way more to a ballot than just the presidential election, right? That's why we say vote down the ballot. There's propositions, there's local elections, there's local offices. There's many people who are independent and or a part of the Green Party and or a part of the Dem Socialists that are running on the ballot who are either local or just smaller, positions, city council, supervisor, etc. So that's one thing. Once again, the ballot you get every 4 years is not just presidential. That's one thing. Second thing is, although he is right, I will give him credit because yes, there are not that many differences with, Democrats and Republicans, especially when it comes to them being president. Obviously, if you look at Kamala or Trump at face value, you would say, oh, well, there is a lot of difference with them. But when it comes to things particularly like foreign policy, they're not very different. They're not any different, actually, especially when it comes to Israel. So I'll give him that. He does have a point there. But at the same time, you have people from the Black community, people from the LGBTQ plus community, people from highly marginalized communities, indigenous communities, saying that, hey, I am genuinely scared of a Trump presidency for the next 4 years because I feel like my life could be in danger because I live in the rural South where I already don't have rights, where those rights are already getting stripped away. And I feel like a Trump presidency would embolden the fact that my life will be in danger, right? If you tell that person, hey, I feel like whether you vote red or blue, you're going to throw your vote away, so vote for me, third party, Green Party, someone that can't even win. That's kind of crazy in my opinion. Because sure, in a state like California or Oregon, Trump or Harris won't make a huge difference, right? Like, yeah, sure, it'll make a difference, but it won't make like a huge difference. But in a state like Louisiana, I'll give an example of a state like Louisiana, right? Because I lived in Louisiana. Yeah, living in Louisiana, especially in the county that I lived in under a Trump presidency, like I probably wouldn't leave the house that much. And I'm not even exaggerating, like I probably just wouldn't. Like I probably wouldn't even feel comfortable. So I just think this is way more multi-layered than what he's painting it to be, right? And it's just like, I like to think that I'm a very reasonable person, especially when it comes to my political analysis. I do fundamentally agree with a lot of the things both him and Jill are saying, but when it comes to them trying to sell, this is why you should vote for me because your vote is going to get thrown away either way, like, I don't think that's very fair.
Viable third-party alternative so that we can get these thugs on either side of the aisle to behave like grown folk.
Well, so you raise an interesting point around throwing your vote away, and there's actually numbers on that. Dr. Stein, you raised over $7.3 million for a recount in 2016, a recount of votes that probably actually do matter. In Michigan, for example, you acquired 51,463 votes. Of course, Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 10,704 votes, and she lost by half a percentage point in Michigan. In Wisconsin, 31,006 votes. You acquired. Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 22,177 votes. In Pennsylvania, 49,485 votes, and Donald Trump beat her by a little over 67,000 votes. You engaged in raising money for a recount because our votes actually do matter. Can you talk about the results of that recount in those 3 states that I just named?
Sure. And let me say that every vote counts, and we believe because every vote counts, that's why we don't want the Electoral College telling us that some states matter and others don't.
Absolutely.
We believe, and in terms of how we are conducting our campaign, we're in swing states, we're in red states, we're in blue states. We are all about building power and really helping to help people to grab the power that belongs to us. The fallacy there, which is what,
So another thing that I don't
the
agree,
Democrats in
so I don't
particular-
necessarily agree with the interviewer's question because she's trying to paint this picture, and I could be wrong, so I apologize if I'm wrong. But from what I took from the way she asked that question is like, hey, listen, if people hadn't voted for you, we could have had Hillary win in these 3 swing states, which could have possibly saved us from a Trump presidency, right? And I don't think that's fucking fair because ever since the 1950s, white women have been coming out by a majority and showing up at the polls and voting for Republicans every single 4 years since the 50s, nonstop. It's been almost 70 years of white women repetitively going to the voting polls by a majority and voting Republican, right? So this whole entire idea that like, oh, if 50,000 people would have just not voted for Green Party, we could have just like saved our nation by having Hillary as president. No, you need to talk to your fucking white family members or your white friends who have family members who vote Republican and try to get them to flip, because that majority is way higher than the other majority that you're trying to talk about, which is quite frankly a minority and minute compared to all of the white women who go out of their way to vote Republican and have been for the past 70 years. So I don't agree with that question either. I think that was a bit unfair.
Harp on, and it's not true. The idea that votes for Greens came at the expense of votes for Hillary Clinton. We actually know from exit polls and just from talking to people who vote for us, and it's about 61% of everybody who votes for us would not have come out to vote. So those votes didn't come from Hillary Clinton, and some of them actually came from Trump too. Yeah. So if you actually crunch the numbers, what you see is that the outcome would not have changed at all if we weren't in the no Electoral College vote would have changed. Exactly, none. If you calculate the fact 61% of our votes would not have voted one bit, and of the remaining,
I would love to do that calculation, but the only thing
I'd
is
be glad to share it with you.
No, I'm not. I actually am. I'm a lawyer because I don't do math like that. But what I will say is, we don't really know that. Like folks come in, even, and you all know this too, from Ralph Nader to you, right? Folks will say that
Ralph
they're going to
Nader,
vote
who
for
was
you.
one of about 6 third-party candidates in that election.
But
Ralph Nader.
But you don't know what my point was going to be.
All
My
right, go
point
ahead.
was just going to be that folks will say, and it's happened to Hillary Clinton, it's happened to Kamala Harris, it's happened to Donald Trump. Folks will say in a poll that they were going to vote or they are going to vote for this person.
That's
and it's
true. You never know.
You don't know.
But we also know that 1 out of every 3 voters did not vote in the last presidential election in 2020. 1 out of every 3 eligible voters chose not to vote. And who were they? They were largely, disproportionately of color, young, and low income. Exactly the people to whom our agenda speaks.
Yeah.
So, a lot about voting is indeterminate, and it's not going to be predicted by polls, because polls, are by definition people who tend to vote.
Sure.
But what we're talking to are people who tend not to vote. Don't they also deserve a vote? And let me also cite the statistics that show the numbers are off the charts right now in terms of people who want other options. Yep. This is sampled every year by Gallup and also by Pew. But Gallup shows that the numbers now are 63% who are saying that the two parties are doing such a bad job of serving the public interest that 63% say we need another option. We need another major party. So it's like amidst all this indeterminate stuff,
Yep.
and you're absolutely right, you can't predict a lot of this. Are we going to clamp down and say, therefore shut down choices, therefore shut down options when that's what people are demanding? And why are people demanding it? Because they've been thrown under the bus for long enough by both parties, and they really want other options. So what we're saying is, let's give people those other options. If you're concerned about splitting the vote, so-called spoiled elections, there's a solution for that. It's called ranked choice voting. We have been pushing that for 20 years, and the Democrats keep shutting it down. Yeah. Why do they shut it down? Because they want to extort your vote. They want to be able to use fear campaigning and smear campaigning because they don't want to face the music. It's hardly a new charge. We can document
I also
that.
Just jump in? I know the question wasn't addressed to me.
of course.
But I just wanted to add a piece to it. And this has come, since I joined the campaign, reached out to colleagues. Dalia Mugahed, key researcher at ISPU, Institute for Social Policy and Understanding. So these are publicly available numbers, and this goes to the heart of the question that you asked about previous elections, but it's about this upcoming one, and then it's about where we actually are. So key swing states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia. Okay. Mm-hmm. These are all, for demographic purposes, essentially the same state. Similar proportion of African Americans, similar proportion of Muslims. There's little differences in the way that they're comprised, but specifically for the Muslim and Black populations, these are very similar states. So in 2020, Joe Biden received 65% of the Muslim vote in those states, and Joe Biden would not have won any of those states without getting that big majority amongst the Muslim vote. Okay, January 2024. 12% of the vote, according to polling.
According to polling.
Yes, from 65% to 12%, okay? And the polling says, well, why? Gaza, right? So 80% of the people that have bailed said that Gaza's the reason. That's for people that were Trump voters, that's for people that were Biden voters. The Muslim community has already been lost and is not coming back. And the thing is that in those swing states, you are never getting the Muslim vote back, which means, in point of fact, if we know this, then the Democrats have for sure.
Joy Reid did an amazing a thread about this, and she said, sure, there may not be that many Muslim voters, but the most important pockets of Muslim people live in swing states. And that's so fucking important. That's so important because she's right. She's absolutely right. In states like Michigan and Wisconsin, sure, when you look at the overarching Muslim population in America, they're not, the main ones, right? Not by a large margin. But when you look at how the Electoral College works and the pockets of Muslim voters that do exist who are very politically active, they live in some of the key swing states. And that's what I don't think the Biden administration really understands or fully grasps, and I don't think it's something that Democrats at large understand or grasp either, right? Because when you look at how they market themselves, especially you can see it in the DNC, they platformed a bunch of CEOs and Republicans. They refused to platform a single Palestinian person within the uncommitted movement, even though they were asking very politely for multiple days, and they held a sit-in outside of the DNC, right? They didn't give a shit. So yeah, they don't really give a fuck about Muslim voters. They've made that very clear. But what they don't realize is that they desperately need these Muslim voters in the swing states, and they're not really getting it. Before the debate, Kamala's polls were in the gutter. I'm sorry, I hate to say it. She was tied in 3 swing states out of the 6. mind you, the margin of error on those polls was 3%. So would you feel comfortable going into that rate? Like, if we would have literally held the elections the day before the debate, she would have lost easily. Like, anyone that understands basic polling could have told you that.
For sure known this. They are not winning any of those swing states without those Muslim voters.
You don't think they're going to show up in November?
Impossible. Dead man walking, bro. Like, I'm serious. It is a zombie.
Well, they will show, but right now they're looking like they're going to be voting for us.
So that's the point.
Yeah.
So Dahlia pointed this out. Yes. So that's what they're showing is that it's upwards of 70% of those that are walking away from the Democratic Party are walking towards third party candidates. So in point of fact, only about 5%, 8%. There were two different numbers from two different points in time that Dahlia had cited. So it's somewhere between 5 and 10% are going towards Trump. It's a very small number. A very small number are remaining uncommitted. The overwhelming majority are going third party. And this was before it became clear, right, that the Green Party was going to be the strongest of those three parties. So then another poll run by the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, showed just last week that in the Muslim community nationwide now not just talking about those three swing states, but nationwide, had us polling neck and neck with Kamala Harris. And actually, a new poll was just released that came out this morning. I didn't get the chance to verify it, see whether it's a scientific poll or not, that we're now leading in that race.
You guys are you're saying that you're competing in red states and battleground states. I'm sorry, y'all jump into, but it just
This is a dope interaction. So let's keep going. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real.
There are at least 13 states where you all are not like on the ballot, or folks would have to write you in, or it's still contested. You're actively petitioning, for example, to be on the ballot in Rhode Island. So in those states where there are also Muslim people who you're saying you're winning over based on a poll that you're going to find the information for, what options do they have? Because if this is a 50 state strategy, y'all are short by 13.
So in every state except for 3, there are 3 states that don't allow write-in campaigns, but write-ins are doable campaigns. Joe Biden himself won a write-in in New Hampshire because he was not in the primary for various reasons. Yeah, right. But even so, even in a primary, he ran a write-in campaign and did fabulous. So having the ability to do a write-in, if the community is really motivated, and
in Wyoming, North Dakota, Kansas,
but in the overwhelming
Iowa,
majority of states, we are actually on the
ballot. We will be on his write-ins in all of the states, with the exception of, I think it's South Dakota,
Indiana, and Oklahoma.
That's right, those 3 states.
But we are on the ballot, not write-ins. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, so we will be a choice, an anti-genocide, anti-war, pro-worker, pro-reparations, climate emergency choice, and the only one which has nationwide status. We will be on the ballot for...
I would personally take anyone over Jill Stein. I'm not endorsing anyone for the presidential race, so please don't take this the wrong way whatsoever. This is not an endorsement. If I were to support anyone during this presidential race, I would heavily encourage y'all to look into Claudia, and forgot the other person's name. But I think Claudia is more genuine than the rest of these people. Then again, this is not a fucking endorsement. Like, I'm not endorsing anyone for the presidential campaign. But Claudia from the Revolutionary, I believe she's in the Revolutionary Communist Party. I honestly don't know what party she's in. She just seems more genuine than the rest of them to me. But I could be wrong. I don't know. She might be a grifter too.
95% of voters. That is more than enough to win an election. But, I don't want to just focus on winning the election. This is an odd election. And I would not rule out a win, but that's not the only reason to run. Every vote cast for our campaign is a vote against genocide. It is a shot across the bow of the endless war machine to say that we, the people, are getting organized. We are moving.
Bro, she said winning isn't the goal. Then what? I'm sorry, I don't get this. I really don't. There are ways you can protest. There are so many ways you can protest against what's happening in Palestine. Like, why does a vote for you necessarily immediately equate to that? This is pissing me off. She said it's not about winning. Then what is it about? Like, honestly though, what do you expect from someone that's been losing for 20 years now though?
Forward, we are growing. We have organization and infrastructure that we have never had before. We've never been able to break through like we are now because Greens have been ahead of the curve on a lot of things like climate change, on reparations, on health care as a human right, on housing as a human right, also on Gaza and genocide. We've been very much ahead of the curve. And on cutting the military budget. We're spending as much as the next 10 major military budgets around the world right now. We're more than all 10 of them put together. We can cut our military budget, which is not benefiting.
Ariana, don't you think this is the first time in forever that a lot of non-institutional third-party candidates are being heavily discussed in mainstream media? Yeah, I do. That still doesn't change the fact that they can't win.
Us here in America and put those dollars into what we critically need right here and right now. We should have... We need to be raising the floor for schools across the country. Why should the quality of your school depend on luxury housing in your community? Schools should not depend only on property taxes from housing. The federal government should be in the business of raising the floor so that we have a common standard across the country. So regardless of your zip code, you have good, high-quality education where you're starting out. Things like that is where we need to be spending our money, not on endless war, on genocide, on killing children, on massacring women and children every day. You know, the police violence in this country. We don't need that police violence. And there are alternatives to that that can actually move us forward. Yeah, go ahead.
You were a candidate in 2012, 2016.
Right.
What's the difference in 2024?
Oh, man. It's the difference between night and day. You know, it's the thing about being ahead of the curve and then the curve catches up to you. Curve is catching up to us on all the things, really, our agenda. In fact, the agenda that we've been putting forward since 2012 really is the progressive Democratic agenda right now. Healthcare is a human right, housing is a human right, reparations to the extent that they give it lip service, the Green New Deal. Yeah.
It sounds like what you want to happen if you're not planning to win an election. And
Who said we wasn't planning to win?
What I heard,
I'm saying it's not the only.
Exactly.
It's not
okay,
the
so
only
it's hard to understand.
As a candidate, to hear that from a candidate, it kind of gives like, well, why are you here then?
It does sound like
You might as
y'all
well
are
join
just
up
here
with
to
a
be
team.
disruptive.
May I go in on this, please? Because I would not have joined this campaign. I would not have come out of prestigious position in the academy and organizing if I didn't think that we had a chance to win this fight. Look, I'm converted to Islam after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X at age 15. Malcolm brought me into knowledge of self, brought me to Islam, schooled me on the Black radical tradition. I've been teaching and building this community. I speak fluent Wolof, lived in West Africa for years. I got a good life, and I'm not coming out of that in order to play no spoiler. So I was raised in that Black Muslim tradition, and just like Muhammad Ali, I came in because I believe we have a chance to shock the world.
We are under attack by the Democrats in particular. And that's what, it's the Democrats. It's not the Republicans.
That's right.
It's the Democrats who bragged starting back in March that they now had an army of lawyers to basically exercise lawfare, looking for trivial details where they could do a gotcha and get us thrown off the ballot, violating the spirit of the law to basically eliminate their competition. They have also advertised publicly for infiltrators and spies to mess up our ballot drives. And they also hijacked our public funding, $300,000. I know it's not a lot in the scheme of what Democrats and Republicans run on, but we're a grassroots, people-powered, low-budget party. That public funding meant a lot, and that's part of the reason why we're not on in three states.
I just have a question, and 'cause I would want all of y'all to chime in on this. Is it fair to call the vice president a war criminal when she's actively calling for an end to the war in Gaza and she's just the vice president?
Well, it's lip service. She could.
What James Baldwin say? I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. You have the power to influence policy now. Sorry,
she's the
Jill,
vice
interrupt.
president.
Yes.
I mean, and to
But
your
she
point,
could at least speak out. She could speak out.
But she is.
No, she
did it at the
speaks out
convention. She
in the
asked for
same
it.
way
The
that
convention
that
where they
Biden
wouldn't
does.
let Palestinians on the stage. We talking about
Not
the
a
same
single
convention?
one.
Where they held them off, where they slaughtering them like animals in Gaza, and then they muzzle them like animals at the Democratic
Even
National
when they are
Convention. Child, please.
faithful supporters of
Child,
the
please.
party and of their candidates, they still would not allow a single Palestinian to get up and talk about just to humanize Palestinians.
so it means nothing to call for the end
When you
of
have-
war.
when you have
Biden
the
is already doing that. He's already doing that. And
I don't think what Charlamagne just said is fair. This interview is pissing me off because I feel like every person on here is being insufferable. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, from the Breakfast Club host to the actual person they're interviewing, like, everyone's pissing me the fuck off because I was at the convention. That shit was dehumanizing as fuck. And it wasn't just what she said, it was the whole entire culture that existed at the Democratic National Convention, because anytime I walked by in my kufiya, I got multiple dirty stares, right? Not everyone gave me dirty stares. There were some people who were, you know, really friendly, and they came up to me and they were like, hey, where can I get one of those, etc. But it was a very alienating experience, and I'm saying this as someone that was there, who was actively joining the uncommitted party with a lot of the things that they were doing. So no, we're not about to do this. We're not about to do like, is it fair? She's a vice president. She's called for a seat. No, that's what we're not about to fucking do here. Okay. The Palestinians were very peacefully asking for a speaker. Your candidate brought on multiple Republicans and CEOs of trash companies. So let's not do that, babes. Let's not.
Kamala Harris, you know, spoke a little more from the heart about the plight of the Palestinians, but not any different whatsoever about what to do. Basically, she said that, you know, our support for Israel is undying. It's, you know, it's an absolute. We will stand by Israel no matter what, come hell or high water.
Because both parties are bought and paid for by AIPAC and the war machine. So that's the thing. Their souls are folded on tiny little pieces of paper that are buried deep in the pockets of Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and AIPAC. I'm not even playing with you. And let me just say this, because I don't know if I'm going to get the chance to say this in another venue where it will matter this much. As a historian of like anti-slavery resistance movements in West Africa and the diaspora, as a historian of the Black resistance tradition in continental as well as diasporic Africa, I am personally offended by the way that...
Yeah, so the kufiya I wore at the DNC got me a lot of fucking hate thanks to a certain creator. But I had actually was traveling prior to the DNC and I had forgotten to pack my kufiya. I also forgot my pants. I had to have someone ship my pants overnight because I forgot all of them. But anyways, I forgot a bunch of shit. And when I got there, the uncommitted delegates themselves were giving out those kufiyas that said Democrats for Palestine. Okay? And I was there to rep Palestine. So if I had to wear a kufiya that said Democrats for Palestine, I was gonna fucking wear it because I wanted to wear a kufiya. And I literally got that from the uncommitted delegates who are Palestinian themselves. So I don't know why everyone was ragging on me on fucking Instagram. I was like, y'all gotta chill the fuck out because I have not fucking endorsed Democrats. And I was literally there just to cover the Democrats, so.
Blackness is being weaponized in this electoral cycle in order to justify white supremacist genocide in Gaza.
Expound.
Please.
Okay, so Malcolm...
and I want to follow that too. Go ahead.
So Malcolm X, my mentor, and I didn't meet him, but read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Malcolm said of Zionism, of the Zionist state, the Israeli state, he said that this is a white Jewish population, the Ashkenazi population, being given power by white imperialists to remove brown Arabs from their land. He said, so therefore Zionism is white supremacy. In 1979, Open Letter to the Born Again, James Baldwin said the same thing. He said the state of Israel was not created for the salvation of the Jews, it was created for the salvation of Western interests, okay? So when you go through Kwame Ture, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, Angela Davis, Assata Shakur, these are all people that cited the Palestinian resistance movement, not even to bring in the Africans, right? Not to mention Nelson Mandela, not to mention Thomas Sankara, who talked about Zionism as being the face of imperialism in the Middle East, right? This is what the Black radical tradition taught me. And the Black radical tradition taught me that if we weaponize our Blackness in favor of white supremacy, then we become apostates from Blackness itself, because Blackness is not a race. It is an oppositional ideology to white supremacy. I'm a historian of Africa by training. Never before in human history
Yeah, I agree with him. I think he's cooking.
had people speaking hundreds of different languages made themselves into one people, developed a common culture so that you and I can relate to one another. You and I can relate to one another on the basis of a shared culture. And we got our Latin and Caribbean brothers and sisters, you know, especially Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, but also, you know, more broadly, right? That share in that culture. That is a miracle. It's never happened before in human history, because what happened is that an oppositional identity to white supremacy came into being, and that is us. And when I see that identity now being weaponized to justify the most heinous genocide in our time, Like Harriet Tubman is rolling over in her grave right now. Sojourner Truth is rolling over in her grave right now. Bell Hooks is rolling over in her grave right now. Who did I miss? Do you know what I'm saying? The idea that we would weaponize something as sacred as black womanhood and then utilize this to justify blowing up Palestinian kids.
You tell me.
No, you tell me. No, you
No,
go,
so
you hear what I'm saying.
What
so
I'm
tell
hearing,
me, yes.
because I want to make sure I clarify before
Yes.
I respond to it, is that because Kamala is a black woman and she's running as a black woman and she's not speaking out against things that you want her to, she's using her black womanhood to.
No, I think so. So what I saw.
Wait, when did he say that? I thought he was talking about the greater black population and how Democrats speak to the greater black population in general.
Is I saw a lot of black abolitionists of both sexes, of all gender identities. I saw a lot of black abolitionists going hard in the paint at Joe Biden, right? And then as soon as Kamala was at the top of the ticket, radio silence. All of a sudden, people that you could count on that were solid through and through as abolitionists suddenly become apologists for empire.
Have you thought about why?
Yes, of course I've thought about why.
Why is that? Why is that?
The reason is that we have this aspirational hope that is related to like black achievement and black power and black excellence, and it was weaponized in the Obama presidency. But so let me.
Could it be something else?
Please
could it
educate me.
Could it be? I know her.
Yes.
Could it be that she is someone who listens to voices on all sides? Could it be that when the opportunity, you can turn your head, but I've been in the room. You can turn your head, but I've been in the room, Dr. Ware.
Don't be disrespectful, Dr. Ware. You're not, though.
No, I was not.
You might have just been feeling the spirit, but I'm just saying, I've been in the room.
I was actually not turning my back. I was looking to see what the response on the other side of the room was.
We're just over here engaged.
Yeah, no, because I can't see the people that are behind me. So no disrespect, Angela.
We're all having healthy conversation, by the way. Nobody's against anybody.
I agree. No,
I ain't never turning my back on Angela Rye ever again. I'm gonna sit over.
Let Ms. Rye finish her thought.
Because the last thing that I need, the last thing that I need is.
So, I'm about to rage quit. I'm really about to rage quit. First of all, Angela Rye has been in the room with Kamala and she is very obviously biased towards Kamala. Number one. You can see that throughout this whole entire interview. She can be biased towards Kamala, for sure. She can, as a black woman, look up to her, be friends with her, whatever, okay? That's none of my business, all right? But she's very clearly biased. That's one thing. Second thing, this person who's sitting in front of you is telling you how much Kamala has ignored and dehumanized Palestinian people, and your response after 34 minutes of speaking is, I've been in the room with her and I know she listens to people. Sorry, were you at the DNC with the sit-in? Were you at the DNC when people were crying for hours outside of the venue because they were not allowed to speak when Republicans and CEOs of different companies who are pieces of shit were allowed to speak? No, you weren't. Right? So not only is she extremely combative, she's biased, which she just showed her bias right now. She just explained her bias, right? But also, she's just not really being, in my opinion, she's not allowing herself to listen, right? To listen and really deeply take in the information that the other side is giving her. Because listen, you can genuinely not like Jill Stein. I don't like Jill Stein, okay? For different reasons than her, more than likely, but I don't like her, right? But you're being combative, you're being condescending. Now you're saying that you're friends with Kamala Harris and you were in the room with her. I'm sorry, you were not at the DNC. You did not see how she treated Palestinian people at the DNC. Point blank, period. That's not up for debate. And this is the shit that's pissing me off, because it's 5 people or however many people are sitting at the Breakfast Club against 2 people, and they're consistently trying to be don't turn your back on Angela. Hold on, give it a second. Holy fuck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This sister making me an enemy.
No, you're not making me.
I knew you was going there.
Healthy conversation.
Why you doing that?
Healthy conversation.
Because it's part of the strategy, friend.
Because I knew you was kind of getting your way to this, and it's very disappointing to see you do that and then say
Get away, Lauren. Get away,
I'm still trying to make.
Get away. What do we misconstrue?
So how I...
Well, let Angela finish her point.
Okay, you go ahead.
And I would definitely like to hear.
Could it be
Me move
that
out your way. You get a little
someone
nervous. I
who-
understand, bro.
No, I'm straight.
Happens to me all the time. Don't
No,
worry.
I just had to like. It's Steve,
Although
we go
that
to
might
my
be
brother's
true, you know, you're
protection.
right.
Like, okay, all right.
I can't
Yeah,
help
you
I'm
don't
with
need to you don't need to be protected from me. My words are not weapons, and actually, it's just really to
Yeah,
dispel
no, for real,
some of the
for real.
myths. I think that since you all believe in polls a lot more than I do, there are a lot of folks that are saying that they still are trying to get to know Kamala Harris, even clearly how to pronounce her name.
Yep.
So what I would say is, it could be that they've seen an opportunity for negotiation, for hearing another perspective. I've
Could
been in
be.
the rooms with her on justice reform issues, and others help to convene those rooms where she's been more open. Because what we do know about how politics works is that it can't just be this wish agenda. I love a lot of what you all have on your agenda. I'll call it the after 7 ready or not agenda. I'll give you the sun, the rain, the moon, the stars, and the mountains. But there's really
Wait, who called it a wish list? You mean
No, I'm calling it that.
the same people that spend $1 trillion of y'all's money blowing up other people's
No,
kids
no,
are
but
saying
I
it's
just-
a wish list to have an actual social programming?
I think
I'm sorry,
that
that's propaganda, man. That's
I
propaganda.
think it's not propaganda. I'm saying it because I've worked on Capitol Hill. It's very difficult to get what you're trying to achieve. So just for example,
Jill can talk about what you can do just from the executive
Dr.
office.
Ware.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just for an example, I'd love to know how many voting members in the United States House of Representatives?
So we have been blocked. The
No, 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 no,
Democrats
no, no,
throw
no, no.
us
How many
off the
voting
ballot. They
members-
interfere. They put spies and
Dr.
infiltrators on our
Stein,
campaign.
How many voting members?
Compare
Republican-
us.
No. Answer the question. How many voting members in the United States House of Representatives, Republican, Democrat, and Independent? How many total?
How many total
Yes.
are there? What is it? 600 some?
No,
You know,
it's 435.
plus 100 in the Senate, right?
100,
Yeah.
100. Yes, I said House
Yes.
of Representatives.
It's 535, 100 in Senate. Jill should have known that the answer to that question. That's why she went viral in all the wrong ways after this interview. This interview is so fucking insufferable.
Yes. 100 in the Senate. Of those 435 in the House, of the 100 in the
Okay.
Senate, how many? Just one moment. I'm not trying to put you on the defense. I'm just saying this because the Hill is my passion. That's where I grew up as a professional, right? How many of them are Green Party members?
Okay, I know where you're going
No,
with
I'm
this.
not going
You are
anywhere. I
attempting
wanna
to show that the
Can she-
Greens
let
are
her answer
powerless.
her way.
I want to make the
Let her
point.
answer her
I was not
that
trying to
one
show
out of
you're
every,
powerless.
Well, this is usually part of that argument.
What was
to
the
say
point
we
you were
don't
trying to
have,
make, Angela? What was the point?
I'm going to
Before you rebuttal, Dr. Stein, what was the point?
I want to know how many voting members of the Green Party in the House or the Senate currently exist.
Currently, there are none. However,
Right.
if you look at the American people, how many are voting against the genocide? Hardly any.
Dr.
How many are
Stein.
voting for health care as a human right, which would actually save us $500 billion a year? We, the people, are not represented. So not being there is not a strike against the Green Party.
Okay, and that's fine. How many of them right now, based on, and I called it a wish list, it wasn't to be offensive, is I have a wish list too. I got one in the ideal man I want to.
It's dismissive to refer to a party platform as a wish list. I'm sorry.
What I'm
I'm
saying,
sorry.
hey, but what
That
I'm
is
saying
dismissive
is,
language.
it's not dismissive. Hear my heart, right?
But I
I
could
heard
ask you
your
the
heart
same.
on the
Okay.
mispronouncing of Kamala. Hear my heart.
All right.
Because
Can we move on from that, please?
there are none that currently exist, that means you got to have allies. Who
Oh,
are your
absolutely.
allies
Yes.
in the
Yes.
House and Senate
Excellent
to help
question.
to see
Excellent
if y'all
question.
would have
Yes.
just slowed down a minute? Y'all had guns blazing.
I told you
and-
it was a healthy conversation.
Right?
We're not
Like,
trying
come
to-
on. We got to do basic
Child,
math.
please let them finish.
He wasn't talking to me when he said that.
But how many?
was not
Who
talking
are
to
the
me.
allies?
He
Can
was
you
talking
name
about
some
the
of your
Dem-
allies in the House and the Senate that would help to get this very aggressive agenda done?
So let me tell you how the agenda would get done.
Yes.
For one thing, we
Can
need
you name
Let
some of
her
your
answer
allies?
the
Yes,
the-
my
the-
question. I want my
sure,
question.
and it will get answered.
Names.
Yes.
We talked about this.
So what I want to speak to specifically is town hall meetings, which used to require representatives to meet their districts. They don't do that anymore. They meet with their
do.
donors. Well, they
No, no,
largely
no.
meet with their donors.
That's not
They're
fair.
meeting with their
Not true.
donors like 90% of their waking time. They're hardly ever going to town hall meetings. I mean, we've been out there on the campaign trail, and when we mention this, we get nods all around the room, especially from the opponents of genocide or from those who are demanding health care as a human right, or from those who want rent control across the country so that we can actually have secure housing in this country. There are so many things that the American people are demanding, but our elected officials are accountable to their donors. So you have got a catch-22 here. You have a very difficult system to change. How do you change it? And it only changes in a crisis. When did the third party come along? That is, it was the Republican Party, which was the abolitionist party. It entered into the scene, basically right before the Civil War, and they had been preparing for it, running. And before the Republicans, there were other abolitionist parties. But it's a long road to get there, and you have to work to get there.
Dr. Stein, what I'm trying to say is, with the the very aggressive agenda you have, I said to you all, I agree with a lot of what you have there. What I'm talking about is, as a political strategist,
let me tell you,
what is your path?
On day one,
who are your?
Well, let me tell you, on day one,
your allies.
On day one, we stopped the genocide. Okay,
who
there's
are
a
your
lot.
allies?
So there's a lot that
I'm trying, but I can't get an answer to my question.
Well, you probably know. Your question, however, denies the power that the president has as the executive. The president has a fair amount of executive authority to actually begin the process. So that process begins with stopping the genocide on day one, which happens with a phone call. It's happened before. This absolutely will happen, especially if we invoke the weapons embargo.
So would you say that you don't need allies?
On issues where you have executive authority, what you need are allies among the people, but you don't need the votes in Congress for much of this agenda. To declare a climate emergency, which we have. The Colorado River is about to shut down. We got people dying from heat, from inadequate food supply. People can't afford their food. Yet the major source of food in the U.S. Is in deep trouble right now. The Colorado River is within 1 to 2 years of shutting down. That supplies the California agriculture system.
What do you mean? Just
it's drought.
drying,
It cannot get into the system. It can no longer get through the outlets coming out of Lake Mead, which is where you have this big reservoir. It's almost too low to make it into the irrigation system to reach many states, but especially California agriculture, which supplies half of the fruits and vegetables for the U.S. So you think food prices are bad right now, just wait a year or two. They're going to be in real trouble. So we would declare a climate emergency, which there absolutely is right now. We just had over 100 days of over 100-degree weather in Phoenix. We got weather conditions that have never happened before. We're in serious jeopardy, not to mention the storms and drought and the trouble for farmers and all that. So we declare the climate emergency, and that immediately triggers the release of over $500 billion every year in emergency funding to begin creating that Green New Deal. That is an emergency jobs program. So no worker is left behind.
So you're telling me the president could do that right now?
Yes, it could do that right now. That could happen right now. And if I could just add something that our brilliant and talented campaign manager, Jason Call, who happens to be in the room with us, I don't know if the cameras want to pan to him. So when we were having this conversation last night after a similarly robust conversation with Mehdi Hassan,
I'm about to rage quit. I don't know how y'all feel, but I'm about to rage quit.
We made the point, and Jason was the one that brought this into the conversation, that if we do land that knockout punch, that Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston knockout punch, and we manage to get 34% of the Electoral College votes in this country, right? And we go from the 5%.
It's 34% of the vote, the actual votes, which would then translate into a majority
in the Electoral College. Thank you for correcting the historian, because we've got a brilliant policy mind here, and I'm still new to this, and happy to be corrected by both family, and new family.
And likewise.
Yes, exactly. So the point is that if we move from that 5%, that we feel is basically assured at this point in time, that will lead to $10 million in federal funding to run the next election, so that we're not chasing, behind. If we have moved to the point where Jill is able to make that phone call, that we've moved from that 5% to that 34%, that will have mean that there is a profound mandate that comes from the American people with that office. Mm-hmm. That means that, yes, you might have these, intransigent, entrenched positions on both teams blue and team red, but what it will mean is that they will have to respond in a different way to Team Green if we have that kind of popular mandate. And that's why we're trying to take the case to the American people. We might fall short in making that case. They may never show us their chin to where we get to throw that knockout punch. But in the meantime, we are able to consolidate power that can be utilized in the next electoral cycle and in subsequent electoral cycles to give the American people a genuine choice rather than just the two gangbangers.
But when you talk about a threat to democracy, like Donald Trump is, right? We can all agree on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. What if, because of y'all, he ended up winning, and then there is no more democracy for y'all to even have a chance to be a threat in the future.
Yeah. So
And it's a good question. We get asked
yes,
a lot.
I mean, Trump is out front, in interfering with the peaceful transfer of power. So a real threat to democracy. The Democrats on their end don't get a lot of, they're not held accountable for this, but they are throwing their competitors off the ballot in advance of the election.
Did they really hire a bunch of lawyers to throw y'all off for 3 states?
Yes, we can send you the articles if you like in the Washington
Nevada,
Post and the New York
Georgia.
Times.
Oh, yeah, I
where
read
they
them.
are,
I read
they're
them.
bragging, actually. They're bragging not only about the consequences, but even when their plan was launched back in March, they are bragging that they have hired an army of lawyers basically to find faults in our, in our petitions, in our electoral process of getting on the ballot. So we have screenshots of their ads, which they have since taken down, but they actually have ads advertising for people to manage infiltrators and spies into our campaigns. And then they actually did hijack $300,000 in our public funding, which we critically needed for the timing of ballot access. And that's why, for example, we missed Oklahoma, because we didn't have the cash on hand to be able to pay the fee, which is what Oklahoma requires. So yeah, they are pulling out all the stops, and then they have. I'm sure AOC was being an attack dog there because she was put up to some ridiculous story which really did not hold water, and I think was really quite embarrassing to her at the end of the day. Before her, it was Jamie Harrison, the head of the DNC, who was trying to smear me about being a Russian agent. Well, that was long put to rest by the Senate Intelligence Committee, which looked into that smear campaign for 3 years. Actually, I had a detailed investigation by the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Where that came from, Dr. Stein, given the fact that you were sitting at the head table with Vladimir Putin next to Michael Flynn, who was literally
not next to Michael Flynn. Not next to.
At the same table,
he was
the
at
head
the table
with National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who was found to have interfered with Russia in the 2016 election. And just months after
you know what my
announced
message was?
Your elect.
This is not productive at all. I hate watching conversations where people get cut off. Piers Morgan does this a lot too. It really pisses me the fuck off. Like, just let the person speak, please. I have to go, and honestly, this is starting to really piss me off. And there's only 20 minutes of it left, so I think I'm gonna rage quit. Okay, let me give you my overview of what I thought about this. I am not a huge Jill Stein fan, right? I do ideologically believe in a lot of the things that she says, and I do agree with her ideologically a lot. But when it comes to her winning and running for president, I believe she's a bit delusional, and I believe she has been delusional for the past 20 years. That being said, if the Breakfast Club wants to bring on a guest, that is great. They've been doing this for way longer than I have. They have a much bigger platform than I do. So who am I? I'm probably not even saying the right things right now, okay? I fully understand that I'm a nobody compared to the Breakfast Club. That being said, though, as a viewer myself, when I watch an interview, when I watch a conversation happening with two opposing viewpoints, because that's clearly what this was, there were two people against 4 or 5 who had, 2 had opposing views, the 4 had opposing views, right? I like to see constructive, productive conversations. The moment Jill sat down, along with her VP, this was extremely combative from everyone on the Breakfast Club, not just Angela. Although Angela was kind of the spearhead of the combative conversations. And listen, I understand. I get it. If you are friends with Kamala, if you are a black woman, there's a lot of things that go into this, right? There's a lot of intersectionalities that go into her running for office. And Jill Stein's VP kept pronouncing Kamala's name wrong, which is a huge sensitive point for a lot of people, right? Not just people in the black community, but people who are marginalized, period, because a lot of the times our names are mispronounced, right? Okay, I get that. But at the end of the day, this conversation, in my opinion, as a viewer, was not constructive. It was combative. And I do not like watching people get ragged on for 40 minutes or an hour or whatever because you philosophically do not agree with them. You can philosophically disagree with them, but let them talk and then at the end say, well, I don't agree with you. I think X, Y, and Z, but we can move on because we're clearly not going to agree on this, right? It's that fucking simple. And that just wasn't really showcased within this conversation because I've seen how the Breakfast Club interviewed Eric Adams. They were shielding him from Olay when Olay was challenging him. And yet with Jill Stein, everyone's ganging and, you know, and it's just not creating a productive environment. It's just not. And me as a viewer, I get triggered. Because also in one part of it that was really fucking annoying was when Angela was trying to, first of all, she was trying to say that Kamala Harris listens to people, which maybe in her situation, and, you know, Kamala Harris listened, but within the Palestinian resistance movement and the uncommitted delegates, Kamala Harris did not listen. She put them on the back burner. She was actually very dehumanizing towards them. So that alone, that statement when it comes to the context of Palestine, which is what Jill was trying to say, is incredibly false. Kamala Harris has not been sitting there and listening and having conversations. I was at the DNC. It wasn't happening. Okay. If anything, she platformed a bunch of other people and not a Palestinian person. She platformed a Israeli family and not a Palestinian, right? So you cannot sit here and argue, well, Kamala Harris listens. Okay, maybe in your situation she did, but not ours. So don't speak for the Middle Eastern community because she was not listening to us. She has not been listening to us, and she most likely probably won't. So let's not do that. So let's not speak over Middle Eastern people or their experiences just because you personally like Kamala and she's your friend. Thank you. But at the end of the day, this whole entire interview was just very insufferable. And like, listen, if it's gonna be a drag fest for views, I get it, do your thing, because that's what it was giving. And that's where I'm gonna end this conversation at, because if I speak anymore, I'm just gonna get really mean, and I'm not trying to do that because I'm trying to be understanding and sensible.